It's time for another Universal Orlando science lesson. I'm Dan from themeparknut.com, and today we are going to react to the science of Universal Orlando Resort Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. Let's get cracking. So you might have seen already that I did a reaction to the Jurassic Park video from the Science of Universal Orlando Resort series, which was mostly about horticulture and a little bit about architecture, and I thought it was really cool. So there's 5 of these videos, and 3 of them are for rides that I haven't been on and I haven't watched spoilers for, but I've seen track footage of Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, and I figured, being the roller coaster one, this has got to be a physics ride, okay? So or a physics video, so I thought this is the one for me. I'm a math science nerd. Let's just get into it and see what we can learn about science from the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. 3 minutes and 26 seconds, here we go. Again, this is such a great initiative from Universal Orlando. Yes, it's because Disney's doing their Imagineering series through Disney Plus, but still, such a good.
Hi everybody, my name is Justin Schwartz. I'm an engineer at Universal Orlando.
Engineering and physics, cool.
When I was 11 years old, I went to my first theme park and I saw roller coasters in action.
That's
and I
pretty
thought
good.
to myself, how do I actually get involved in building these roller coasters? So I went to my teachers, I went to my friends and family and talked to them about it. And they told me, they said, hey, the best path to becoming a roller coaster designer is to get into the field of engineering. So that's what I did. Today we're going to learn a lot about the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket roller coaster and the physics and science behind it. The steps for designing a roller coaster at Universal require a very specific engineering design process. And for Rocket, we knew we wanted to build a roller coaster that involved music and audio. So the first thing we did was, let's come up with some cool ways to deliver that audio experience to our guests. We did that by adding onboard audio, onboard lighting,
kind of take that for granted these days. Lots of rides have
total experience
soundtracks, but
and the design phase, we use computer programs to understand the science and the dynamics behind the ride itself. And from that, we have to go ahead and make design changes in order to make it fit within our layout, within our space that we have. When we design the elevations and turns on a roller coaster, particularly on the Rocket, we have to use science and math to figure that out. And the main things we use when we're trying to figure those things out are Newton's laws of motion and kinetic energy and potential energy.
okay, cool.
When we lift a ride to the top of the hill, we're actually adding potential energy into the ride. And when the ride goes over the top of the hill, it changes that potential energy into kinetic energy.
Yeah, cool.
Newton's first law of motion indicates that an object in motion will stay in motion as long as no outside force is applied to it, or an object at rest will stay at rest unless an outside force is applied to it. Also, Newton's second law of motion, which is force equals mass times acceleration, talks about the relationship between an object's force, its mass, and acceleration. On a roller coaster, when we bring that vehicle to the top of the hill with a chain, we're actually accelerating that vehicle, and there's forces attached to that chain when we accelerate the vehicle up to the top of the hill. So it's really important that we understand that relationship, that we size the vehicle appropriately, and we understand what those accelerations need to be. Newton's third law of motion says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So on a roller coaster, there's this relationship between the ride vehicle itself and the track. So on a ride like Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, we have this big red steel track and these polyurethane wheels. And as the ride vehicle goes through and maneuvers through different lines,
look at the forces.
it creates forces, and those forces get applied into the track. The track then transmits
like
those forces into
vectors,
the columns
that's
of the
cool.
ride and into the foundations in the ground. But what also Newton's third law of motion is telling us is that those forces get reapplied back into the vehicle, actually through the wheels, into the wheel carrier, into the axle, into the steel frame of the vehicle. So all of those components on the vehicle themselves have to be sized appropriately, and the material has to be specified appropriately, such that the forces can be transmitted and absorbed correctly.
It's fascinating.
All those pieces are very important for us to make sure that we deliver a ride that's exciting and unique to our guests.
That's fascinating. Oh, I would love to have had a slightly deeper, this is still going, but a slightly deeper dive on some of the physics there, because they just kind of dropped, you know, the 3 laws of motion, but they didn't really talk about how having, you know, I guess they're not teachers, they're engineers, but, you know, they could have talked a bit about how the mass of the people at the top of the ride, plus the gravitational force, is determining how fast the ride actually goes down the slope, and how the ride needs to be able to cope with particular weight ranges, and how the ride's designed to cope with that in terms of increased or decreased force, because both can be a problem, right? If you have too much force, then bolts are shearing and all sorts of things are happening. So, but on the whole, again, aiming this at middle school people that aren't sort of doing physics as such, but they're getting into the concepts behind physics that they'll learn about more of in sort of senior schooling. I think that's really, really good. I think that, again, that will appeal to a whole bunch of kids, particularly those that have been on roller coasters, that have been to Universal Orlando in the US, who obviously can't go at the moment, but I think that's really good. Like I said, too short. I know the Imagineering doco is really long and would be too deep for children. That's a lot about their creative and political sides, and not necessarily about sort of the learning sides. I think there's space for something in between where you can, I would love to see more documentaries about how Disney invented the linear launch system, the linear actuators launch system that are used on modern coasters, and the magnets and how they all work. Obviously you can't do that with Rip Ride Rockit because it uses a gravitational launch. It's a chain lift, but there are other rides that they could be doing that on. But still, absolutely applaud Universal Orlando for doing these great series of videos. So thumbs up from me from a science point of view, 100%. Great job, Universal. Thank you for watching me geek out a little bit on the science of Universal Orlando Resort Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit video. We'll be back on Friday with a something in a minute video. It may be theme park news, but I will get you posted. In the meantime, you can check us out on Twitter at Theme Park Nuts, on Instagram, Theme Park Nuts, that we're uploading is themeparknuts.com. Don't forget to subscribe wherever it is. And until next time, cheers.